Adam, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Can you start a bit by telling us about who you are and what Band Academy does?
Sure thing. My name's Adam, as you've said there. I am a musician and a teacher living in Suffolk. And Band Academy basically is a small teaching business that works with schools across Suffolk. For some of our schools, we work delivering one-to-one lessons with partnered teachers. And then most of my teaching now is in our band experience sessions. So, bringing students in primary schools together in small bands to learn guitar, drums, bass, singing, and keyboard, and basically giving young students the chance to try different instruments, get started, obviously play and have fun in a group together, and hopefully building lots of confidence, having some fun along the way.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, what were you doing before you launched Band Academy?
So let's think how long. It was a long time ago now. I'm going to show my age now. We started in 2016. So yeah, it'll be 9 years this summer holidays. So before that, I was in a band myself, and so we started. Must have been 21 when I started, and we had said when we were in the band, we started when we were in sixth form together, so kind of
Yeah.
16. And we really wanted to make a full run of it. So from the ages of 18 to 21, we gave ourselves the chance to try and, if you like, make it in the
Yeah.
band. So whilst our friends were going off to uni, me and the three other guys said, do you know what? We're going to give everything to this for 3 years. We're really going to chuck ourselves at it. So we're kind of working jobs that fit around. I was working in a bar a couple of nights a week just to make sure I could eat,
Yeah.
the basics, but was also very lucky enough to be living at home at the time. So
Yeah.
there's one thing I will always mention, I've had to go back to my school and stuff and do some talks and things like that. And that's a massive luxury that I understand that not lots of people get to benefit from, is kind of being able
Yeah.
to live at home without that responsibility from a young age. So for us, 18 to 21, working a couple of nights a week, being in the band, it was manageable, but obviously not everyone has that luxury. So
Yeah.
for us, we did the 3 years, and then found that we had a really fun time, but it wasn't something that was going to be able to be a career for us, and decided that we wanted to kind of go out whilst we still had the passion for it, but still felt that it was fresh and it wasn't sort of something we'd been hammering at away for 20 years and
Yeah.
hadn't quite made it. So from there, it was obviously a pretty logical next step to try something again that was quite risky because we decided at that point we were used to having next to no money.
Yeah.
And sort of if there was any time to take the risk and start a business and see where it might go, it was that point before we got used to, being too comfortable and things like that.
Yeah. At what point did you decide that the band thing wasn't going to work? Because it's quite hard to know when to quit something, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, there's I think they call it the sunk cost fallacy, which is the two ways of looking at something, isn't it? You either look at it as, oh, we've put 3 years worth of work into this. We must keep going for the next 10, otherwise we've wasted the three. Or you can look at it as we've put 3 years of work into this. We're not quite where we wanted to be. So it's time to move on. And we'd always set ourselves that 3 year block. So I
Okay.
think
That's quite a good idea, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
for us it worked, and I think if we'd been closer, if you'd felt like you were just on that edge, and if you stuck with it for another 2 years, it was going to lead to something. But to be honest, I think it's such a hard thing, isn't it? Like, how do you make it these days in such a busy
Competitive.
market?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously people do, and that's absolutely, I'm inspired by them because we really gave it our best. But for us, we always looked at it as an experience and as a time and as that alternative to going to university. We knew that education route wasn't for us. So as a replacement for that, it served its purpose. And obviously, a lot of the connections we made during that 3 years is now sort of what we've then lent on a little bit with Band Academy as well.
Okay. Sure. So, what was like the first step you took to bring Band Academy to life?
So Band Academy has actually gone through lots of iterations, to be honest, and that is part of like the try and fail process that I find I repeat most days still. Unfortunately, you still think things are a great idea in your head, and they come out in
It's always the
practice.
way, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
you get so initially excited about an idea, and
yeah,
then
this
you
is going
put
to
it
be
into
huge.
practice. You're like, oh,
Yeah, but I think that's what's kind of good about it as well, is it consistently humbles you to the point where I just don't think your head can ever get that big because you think you know quite a lot about what you're doing, and then you learn something new, which I enjoy that process. So yeah, when we first started, the idea was to run holiday camps. I say we because originally it was set up with my friend called Jake, who was the singer in the band. So it was the two of us. And over COVID, he moved on to different things. But it's still at the start, at least the story is the we. So I'll always say the we. And yeah, we went round to lots of different high schools promoting our holiday camp. And we thought these holiday camps were going to be maxed out. It was going to be absolutely slammed. We were going to work during the terms to promote them, and then the holiday camp. And we started with the grand total of 3 students. And one of those was actually funded by the Mix and Stowe Market. So I think we visited something like 12 high schools, did assemblies, did all this work, and ends up with 2 students. So fairly quickly realized that wasn't the product that was gonna fly. Then moved on to after school clubs. So we did a similar-ish thing that we do now, but with more students, and they would come for an hour after school once a week. And we found that did really well, but because it was packaged up to run for a term, you'd kind of finish the term and go, oh, we need to go find another 10 schools now. And each term we were burning through. So again, we were then looking for something a bit more consistent. And that's when the one-to-one sort of lesson started. And obviously at that point, that was probably the least revolutionary idea we'd had.
Yeah.
The holiday camps were pretty ambitious. They were writing songs, recording, performing live, designing t-shirts, all the rest of it. So was the after school club. It was a really thought out package. And then in the end, it was the thing that was kind of the easiest to replicate, but put our own spin on it, that really then made it something that we could rely on consistently and then grow obviously from there. So yeah.
Okay, sure. How many years did it take you to get to that final business model?
Well, it's funny because actually, I would say even within the last 2 years, the model has changed. We went from we had teachers that were working with us that were sort of contracted to Band Academy, and they've now moved to being more separate and having their own entities that they teach, and we sort of just facilitate that connection between teachers and schools and providing the materials. And then I only started doing the band sessions full time a year and a half ago now. So that kind of went from being something that I thought we'd try and see how it went, and then now my whole week is taken up with those sessions. So I think that's the other thing I've always really liked. It's fun to have a challenge and to try new things, and I think you always think that the idea you've come up with now will be your last. But
Never
actually,
is.
yeah, your history of the last 9, 10 years, whatever, has shown you that whatever you think you're going to be doing forever, it changes after a couple of years anyway. But it also means you're trying new things, and it keeps it fresh. It doesn't get stale
Sure,
because
sure.
you can try new stuff.
On sort of the business side of things, what would say is the biggest mistake that you've made with Band Academy, and what did it teach you?
Crikey, that's tricky. There's been lots, obviously, as I say, it's
Yeah.
consistent. I would say doing things without full intention. And I think that's the reason I think that one is because it's quite general. It applies to everything. So everything you do, it's a hard one to explain, but if you do things just because it's the natural flow and because you think you should, and that's sort of as much as you think about it, I think things like that are bound to fail. Whereas if you go into something with purpose and intent and say, this is what I would like to do, this is how I'm going to get there, these are the measurables I'm going to look at along the way, and this is when I know it's working, I think you set yourself up for that success. And I think it sounds like a really basic thing, and you go, well, surely you'd do everything within a business with that intent. But I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of, one, getting quite busy, two, your brain can feel quite stretched at times anyway because you're thinking of every single aspect. So you kind of just go, oh, should we just do that? Should we just chuck that out there? Should we see if that helps ease us a little bit or something like that? And I think actually what I've found is there's a direct link between how well thought out and planned something is to how likely it is to succeed when you do deliver it. So I would say, yeah, everything you do, at least try to go in with a structured
Bit of intent.
plan. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you'll then see the benefits from that.
what are some of those measurements that of success that you were talking about then? Like, what did you like write down a goal? It's I'm going to get that many
Yeah,
students or that much money.
100%. So I think, yeah, trying to, for me, the biggest one will be retention. So I've never really looked at it as a financial thing because I think, especially when you're working with, any kind of service where you're hopefully offering something that's beyond just, if I was just selling plastic cups, I don't feel passionate about plastic
Yeah.
cups and no one's really buying them and they're changing their life, right? But I hope that what we do as a service for some students, like it would for myself when I was learning music at school, like that changed my life. So I like to think that what we're offering is something that, might have a big impact on
Yeah.
people.
Long-term
So
impact.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So to look at it as just financial, I think is kind of doing it maybe a bit of a disservice. So for me, as I say, something like retention and the dropout rates is really important. That sort of shows once we get someone started, how much are they enjoying it and how likely are they to stick with it for a long time. So if I can see that we're having retention rates drop somewhere, then it's looking at how we do that. And again, it does take a bit of upfront work, but looking at that maybe once a month and trying to
Yeah.
figure out where things might be going wrong, I think is really important as well.
What is one of the biggest challenges that you faced when running the music education service? Maybe it's to do with the schools, people-wise,
Yeah,
employees-wise. Like, what sort of aspect would you say is the biggest
I think
challenge?
yeah, one of the biggest challenges we've found is actually making those connections in the first place.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of businesses will struggle with this. Like it's cold outreach. It's how do you reach your sort of client base? Because once we've started working in a school, we've never left. We've been able to build sort of really good
Yeah.
relationships with them. So
yeah,
it's finding ways, and I think it's being creative at points to make those connections. So a lot of the time now we'll try to offer something up front. So it might be that
Like
we'll
for
go to
free.
do
Yeah.
do a free assembly. And I think a big narrative now is that people shouldn't give their time away for free, and everything should be covered and paid. And I totally agree with that if it's regular work, but if it's one-offs, I think to show who you are, to demonstrate what you're capable of, sometimes you have to give your time for free. As I say, not every single week, but if it helps you to make a connection, then yeah. But I think that's the thing I've found that the hardest, and I
Sure.
guess that's
Okay.
something that's quite difficult to learn how to do. You just have to again try every form of making that connection and figuring out what has the best sort of turnover rate for you.
If you
perfect.
were to email like a school and they weren't to reply, would you persist emailing them? Would you call them up, or do you just like leave it there?
Yeah, so I think we generally don't now do sort of just cold email outreach, just because I find that, especially for somewhere like a school, and this is probably true of any business or organization, you get 1,000,001 emails of people asking you for something. So
Yeah.
I think it's very hard to make an email stand out, and also to get across your personality and something like that in an email.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so generally now it will be to either pop into the school and see if I can chat to someone face to face. I find it's much
Yeah.
easier to break down barriers face to face, and
In a weird
also
way, like it's harder to say no in face to face, isn't it?
yeah,
Even though
yeah,
that sounds
definitely,
sounds a bit bad, that, but it is harder to say. You go
hundred
to a
percent.
venue asking for a gig, they're
Yep,
less likely to say no if you're in person.
exactly. And also, I think people just genuinely appreciate the effort you've gone to. So, like
Yeah.
your example there, how many bands will just send a blanket email that's not
Yeah.
personalized to 100 venues and hope that, and it's kind of what I was saying earlier, that's going into it without intent. It's saying, oh, I'm just going to send it out to every single venue in the
Yeah.
area and I'm going to hope one of them comes back to me. It's hopeful, but it's not with purpose. Whereas if you went, right, looking at the area, these are the 5 best venues where we know we're going to get in front of the right people. Rather than spending a day emailing 100, we're going to pop into those 5. We're going to make a pack that tells us exactly why they should host us, what numbers they can expect when we bring our band into performance, stuff like that. And that's then going with the intent. And I think you're then going to end up better with 5 really good gigs than you
Yeah.
are 100 subpar. So I think with that stuff, yeah, just putting your plan forward and then really going for it.
Interesting. I mean, imagine a lot of people just read emails and completely forget to reply to them.
Yeah.
So I probably get 100 every day. So
100%. And they're especially if you look at schools, we know they're generally a bit understaffed and working really, really hard for their students anyway. So sometimes an extra thing comes in, they go, that'd be lovely, but right now we're battling Ofsted, we're doing this, we're doing that. There's so much going on, we can't really think about that. So I think it's trying to make it as easy as possible for people to say yes as well.
In the company, was there ever a point where things got very difficult and you thought about stopping? And if so, what kept you going?
That is a good question. I'm going to be honest, I've never thought about stopping. I think I've been very lucky in this fact that it's sort of gradually grown. And I actually think that's a much nicer way of things happening. I know it must be lovely for some people to be like this overnight millionaire success. And maybe one day it'll happen, who knows? But I think yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it definitely can happen, but I think for most people, and actually, I think what's better for your sort of mental health and well-being is gradual, steady increases. It's not one day being down here and then the next day flying up there and then being back down.
yeah,
That's actually quite hard to manage emotionally. Whereas I've enjoyed very slowly and sort of steadily building things up because it always means we're kind of celebrating a little victory. There certainly has been hard times. And yeah, as I say, nothing that's made me want to fully stop. But what I think potentially one of the things that was the hardest time was when we had a bigger team that were working, as I say, specifically for Band Academy. That then turned into more of a management role for me, which was something that I hadn't really done much in the past. And what had started as something that was my passion, which was music, had ended up sort of turning slightly into not my passion, which was managing just a team. Obviously, if I'd been passionate about that at the start, I would have, tried to get into a management position in a company or something like that. But what I also think is amazing about, having that freedom to change is that because that wasn't quite what we wanted for the future of the business, we just changed it. And having that ability to change things to make them better for you, I think is something that, is the best luxury about doing something for yourself and starting your own business or things like that, because you go, oh, not quite sure that's making me super happy, not quite sure that's what I want. That's sweet.
you have
We'll just do
control.
this instead.
Yeah.
And obviously it takes time and it takes work and it's uncomfortable to begin with and all the rest of it. But just knowing you have that option, I think just is great for your head, and you don't feel so stuck.
Interesting.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some like the skills you learned building this, because you didn't go to university and do business administration or whatnot.
No.
So how did you learn some of these business skills, and what were they?
I think it is just something you pick up over time, and that's not to say as well that now I sort of, as I say, know it all or anything like that. I still new things crop up every day. I would say one of the best ways to make sure you do actually learn is to kind of write things down. And it was advice that I'd heard on a podcast once that basically said, at any stage, your business should sort of be able to be passed on to someone else fully. And I guess the example is that, most people, if they're trying to build like a really successful business nowadays, most of the time will be building it to sell. Build up all the assets, all the intellectual property and stuff like that.
Did you start with that? Sorry to interrupt you, but did you start with that end point? Like you're like, I'm going to build this to hand on?
No, never, to be honest. No.
Okay,
and to be honest, now I don't even think about it as something I would. It's still not particularly the aim. Because as I say, we are still a very small business, and we're quite localized just to the area. So I don't know I'll ever sort of sell up, and whilst I've still got the passion for it, but to have things kind of systematized and written down in a way that if you were to sell it next week, it would make sense to someone else. And I think that's the way you can make sure you do learn the lessons, is that every time something comes up for the first time, you then make, even if it's just a little document, you just write down the process that you went to fix that problem or something like that. But I think the one thing I would encourage people to make sure they do very closely is tracking finances, because I don't know the exact stat, but the biggest killer of small business in the UK is cash flow. And I imagine that's probably worldwide as well. I just know it's definitely in the UK. And I think it's something people don't expect. They think of the headline figures, they think of the turnover, but they don't necessarily think of their outgoings as well. And I think unless you know exactly what's going on in your business's finances, you actually can't scale at any point or can't grow because you don't know whether you have that sure footing. So I would say that would be best advice for someone that's starting out. Make sure you're on it with stuff like that, and you'll quickly learn how to figure that out.
Interesting. Okay.
But definitely track that stuff, because otherwise, it can sometimes be a month or two going wrong, and then a business is like, well, we've run out of money now. So, it's not a point you want to be at.
Yeah. Do you do all the accounting and marketing yourself?
Yeah, so I just keep track of finances, and then I have an accountant. So he will file our sort of books for the year and things like that. And obviously he's on hand for any new things that crop up and seeking that advice. But it's definitely sort of understanding those things is key before you start, especially things like when you pass thresholds for VAT and things like that. If that stuff takes you by surprise, it can be an absolute nightmare to then work around, especially VAT. You think that's either 20% on top of your prices, or that's you swallowing a 20%, decrease. So, or balancing it between. So actually, if stuff like that shocks people, that's almost impossible to work around, because then you go, 20%'s a lot. So I think, again, just knowing that stuff going into it and doing your research first, it is going to set you up really well.
Sure.
How important has mentors, collaborators, or just local networks in general, just people, been in your journey?
I'd say massively so. It can sometimes be, whilst it's lovely to have that flexibility to sort of be on your own and change things around, it is also at points quite daunting, because there's no one else to make that decision for you. Every decision sort of starts and ends with you. So the pressure to get things right and the pressure at points to know the right thing to do is quite tricky. So having people to chat to about that, yeah, absolutely. And I think also just looking at people that are maybe where you'd like to be, or even slightly above you. So there's sort of some Facebook groups I'm part of that are like, community groups of music teachers. And I think even just psychologically seeing people having the same problems as you is really refreshing. You go into it thinking, oh, I'm struggling with this thing, that must be a me problem. And then actually you see 20 other people going, yeah, I'm having the same problem at my studio, or whatever it might be, is really refreshing. I think it takes the load off. So I think always having someone that you can ask to that maybe has taken that next leap, that's maybe gone from one person to a small team, or a small team to franchising, or something like that, really gives you a bit of vision. And if you can ask them how they did it, then you're going to get some really invaluable insights from them.
Perfect.
Sure.
Talking about teams, what does your hiring process look like, and how do you ensure that the people you're hiring are good?
Yeah, that's a really tricky thing to do. Obviously, takes a bit of time to figure that out with someone. So obviously, as we're set up at the moment, we don't have sort of strict staff. It runs more in sort of a license model. So teachers will be independent and come in, but of course my job is still to ensure that there's quality there. So it will start, obviously we use Indeed for sort of advertising for those roles when they come up. So the first port of call will be reading through their CV and their application. And again, for me, a big thing at this point is whether someone has actually put that little bit of time in. I'm not asking for a sort of 6-page essay on why they think they're the perfect fit for Band Academy, but if someone has just one-clicked apply and I just get their general CV, then still maybe we're going to have a chat after that. But if someone has taken the time to write specific, previous experience that could apply to the role, a short paragraph on why they think, working for Band Academy could be a nice thing to do, that goes a long way with me, because I think if you put the effort in at that stage, it shows that someone has that little bit of organization, that little bit of extra something about them that will probably make them a good fit for what we do.
Go a little bit further.
100%, yeah. And as I say, I'm not demanding, too much, but just little bits makes a big difference in terms of sort of the effort there. Sure. And then standard, when we then have a first call with someone, basics like showing up on time. If they've got themselves set up and they're ready and, they're kind of sat and composed, that bodes really well. If they're kind of walking in the door and they're on their phone going, yeah, sorry, I'm just going to make up, again, everyone's got busy lives and things like that, but it doesn't, if someone's really put that effort in, it bodes them well.
Sure.
And then from there, it's meeting them face to face. And I think over time, again, face to face, easier to gauge people. You get that gut instinct on what someone's going to be able to do. And I think what I've always led with, and it's worked out pretty much every time, is you can't really teach someone to be a nice, personable person and easy to chat to. That's a very hard skill to learn. The teaching, if they're passionate, is easy to learn. I think as long as you're passionate about what you're doing, you can pass that on to others. Whereas it's very hard for me if I get a bad vibe from someone straight away and they're a bit short and they're not very patient with me. How are they going to be patient, for example, with young students?
Yeah.
So I think you're looking at the person first, and the skills with the right teaching, nurturing, and everything else, I think, can follow. So that's sort of where I've gone with that.
Yeah,
Going with
perfect.
the gut.
Just to sort of wrap up, if someone wants to start a similar business, what would be a bit of advice you'd give them?
I would say just to get started. To be honest, I think don't. Obviously, as I say, go in with the intention, but I think you need to figure out whether that's something you really enjoy and are passionate about first. I wonder if I didn't have the passion for what I did and I didn't have the love for music and wanting to pass that on, maybe whether I would have been closer, like you said earlier, to giving up at points when I got really tough. But actually, you need to first figure out if you enjoy the process. And for some people, I think they try it and they go, oh, this is really tough. They're maybe a very, very accomplished musician and they find it hard to relay things to someone that doesn't understand it, and they expect that progress to be really fast. So I think just try it with a couple of students, see if you actually really, really enjoy it. And if you do, I think that passion will take you pretty far from there. But to start with, jump in.
I think I've also got the vibe that you have to go the extra mile with
100%.
everything you're saying. And
Yeah,
go a little bit further than other people.
Absolutely. So I think it's small. It doesn't have to be big things. It doesn't have to be that you visit everyone's house and you turn up and you bring them a cake every time you go. It's just if
nice.
you do, that'd be right. So now I'm thinking about it. That's a new idea.
Good business idea.
But I think turning up on time, being punctual, looking professional, doing those little extras like keeping people in the loop.
Knowing your stats.
Yeah, 100%. And communication, I think, is just a massive, massive thing. I think people really underestimate how important that can be to bringing your customers in on a journey with you. So even if I've not got an update for, say, for example, we're setting up a new school, I'm waiting to hear on the start date from the school, and I've got some customers waiting. Even if there isn't news, you've still got to send out and say, we're just waiting on the news, we're going to come back to you ASAP. If you leave them 3 weeks, those leads have turned into, they've gone somewhere else, they've moved on.
Yeah.
So I think without badgering people, just keeping people in the loop at every stage, making them feel part of it, I think you can really set yourself apart from lots of people by doing that well as well.
Yeah. What's one thing you wish you knew when you first started Band Academy?
How long things would take. I would
Be in
have,
it for the long run.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think I would have, I think I had these expectations in mind. As I say, I thought we'd start these
Overnight millionaire.
Yeah, 100%. I thought we'd start those holiday camps and they'd be full straight away.
Driving your Porsche around the next day.
100%. Cruising in, I'd have a team of 100 people and it would all be golden. But yeah, sort of just knowing that all good, there's all those cliche sayings, but good things come to those who wait, and stuff like that. That they are true.
It's worth telling yourself them again, isn't it?
100%. And just going into it knowing that if you enjoy the process of building it up, then every day is a great day. If all you're chasing is the end goal, then unfortunately that end goal just keeps moving and keeps shifting. And the point you wanted your business to be at 6 months ago, you've already hit it, but it hasn't sort of given you that full glow that you expected. So just enjoy the sort of graft of the day to day, and then everything from there will be good fun.
Lovely. Okay,
Perfect.
what's next for Band Academy?
Oh, that's a tricky one. To be honest, right now, we're sort of settled as we are. I'm still always working on outreach, always moving for new schools, but again, not going for a crazy rush. And because I am teaching more now, I have a bit less time naturally for that. I think at some point it would be lovely to be able to offer full-time employment to people with the band sessions that I'm now working on as well. So I think in the next couple of years that will be the hope. But for now, just making sure everything's running super smooth, and then we might be ready for that next stage of growth from there.
Sure. Okay. And where can people follow Band Academy or reach out and get involved?
Yeah, so all the standard socials. So a Band Academy UK, because Band Academy something else already existed in America.
I know.
So Band Academy UK on the socials. Website is bandacademyuk.com. Tells you a bit more about what we do. But the best way is to have a look on Instagram or Facebook. That kind of shows you visually what we're up to and what we do.
Lovely. Thank you very much for
Perfect.
talking
Thank you
to
so
us.
much.
Thank you, guys.